Recording in progress. Okay, you guys, we're gonna get this on real quick.
These steps up. This was the stage. And this was a big, this was a big hardwood paint.
All right, we're working on it. We're working on it. All right. All right, you guys, we're just about ready to start. I'm just trying to get it where you can see the speaker. If you can see me, will you write that in the chat? You guys see me? Can anybody write something in the chat so I know you can hear me? Oh, excellent. Thank you.
The information packets, I'm going to hand them out.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, we're going to get started. Let me see if I can get this in present mode. All right, perfect. All right, I think we're set. All right. Wait, now I'm not in full mode. Okay. All right, I think we're good now. Okay. So we're just passing out some information packets, and then we'll get started. Okay? Thank you. So they can see you, just so you know. I haven't figured it out where you can see what they see, but they can see your...
I don't need to see. I just I'll just do the top.
Okay, but they can see you. No worries. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. And do you need this? Are you doing this? Yeah, I'll be doing that. Perfect. There's some waters there if you need. Okay. Thanks.
Can I just make some, can I speak?
What?
Just want to say something before you start speaking. We just want to hold all the show at the end. Everyone, hello. My name's Amory Williams. I have the privilege of working for the assessor. He's going to give you a fantastic informational presentation. I'm asking if you can hold all the questions to the end, if you don't mind, please. We'd greatly appreciate that. Now, Los Angeles County Assessor, Jeffrey.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's nice to see you. Thank you for this kind invitation to speak with you today. I think the first time I've had a chance to address this group. Maybe some of you have heard me on Zoom before. Hopefully I won't bore you as much today as I did back then. But my name is Jeff Prang. I'm the LA County Assessor. I always like to begin my presentations. I'm going to tell you a lot about what my office does, but I'm going to begin by telling you what my office does not do. I do not collect property taxes. I am not the tax assessor. There is no such thing as a tax assessor and never has been. There's an assessor and there's another guy who collects taxes. He's got a very intuitive title. He's called the tax collector. Different person, different department, but all joking aside, just a little bit about my office. I am one of 3 countywide elected officials. I'm the one that nobody's ever heard of. Everybody knows the other 2. That's the sheriff and the district attorney. But my office is the largest local property assessment agency in the United States. We have about 1,400 employees. About half of them are real estate appraisers. We're responsible for compiling the value of all taxable property in the county, which includes both real and personal property, as well as business property, which includes furniture, equipment, machinery. It also includes boats, commercial and general aviation aircraft, mobile homes, and for some oddball reason, racehorses. I always like to emphasize that in a lot of ways, my office is the most important local government agency, because any other government agency which depends on property taxes, they don't get to do their job until I've done mine. And if I don't do my job really well, then money which should be going into police and fire and roads is left on the table. So the property tax system is pretty complicated, and there's a whole bunch of different agencies that each have a different role with it. I think it's designed to optimally confuse people. But essentially the way it works is when you purchase property, you record a deed with the registrar recorder of the county. If you do new construction, you pull a permit with the local city. Those permits and deeds come to my office, and we dispatch an appraiser who determines their value. We then turn over all that data to another department you probably never heard of called the auditor controller. The auditor controller is the one who tells you how much you owe. They apply all the tax rates and the special assessments and all those things. They then turn that data over to the treasurer tax collector. That's the guy who sends you your bill and collects the payments. The main job of my office is the annual production of something we call the assessment roll, which is essentially just the inventory of all taxable property in the county. And it serves a couple of key functions. Obviously, the first one is it's the basis for the property tax system. Secondly, it's an important tool for local government and school districts. They use it in anticipation of property tax revenues as they're preparing their budgets. And then thirdly, it serves as an important economic barometer as to the health of the local real estate market. We work on a fiscal year, so we are at the very tail end of what we call roll closure. We have 4 days to process all the transactions that happened over the last 12 months to determine where the market is for the year. We did project back in May that we believe that property values countywide were going to increase about 4.75%, which will bring the total value of all assessed property in the county to over $2 trillion. Just as an aside, I did a little history. Over 100 years ago, the assessor used to be compensated not with a salary, but with a percentage of the assessment roll. And I was thinking, I'm sure you would agree that maybe like 1% of that $2 trillion is probably fair. But I'm teasing. But the two big contributors that led to this growth in property values, the main one is essentially what you do, sales of property. Every time the property sells, at least in LA County, the value goes up and the taxes go up as a result. The other thing that contributed to some of that growth is the annual Proposition 13 cost of living adjustment, which is capped at 2%, but that did add several $1 billion to the value of all property. One of the most common questions I get about how we do our job is people don't necessarily understand how property gets reassessed. You are all aware that Proposition 13 is the governing document and provision in the Constitution that tells us how property is reassessed. Property is reassessed at the time of transfer, or when somebody buys it. But there are a couple other times when your property could be reviewed. If your property increases in value, you don't get reassessed. You just get more equity. For your property to get reassessed, a couple things have to happen. The first one is doing new construction, adding something to your property that was not there before. This could be an ADU, it could be a second floor, it could be adding a pool where there wasn't one. And when we do that, it's important to note that we don't reassess the entire property. We only assess the value of what's being added. So if you have $1 million house and you add a $250,000 ADU, the new assessed value of the property is $1,250,000. Even if that addition increases the market rate to, let's say, $5 million. The other thing that will cause property to be reassessed is a change in ownership. Typically, we think of a change in ownership as I own it, now you own it. But anytime you change a name on a deed or the ownership of that property, even if you continue to reside there or own that property, that is a legal change in ownership and is reassessable. And what this happens here's a good example of how this happens frequently. 3 children inherit property from their parents, and their name goes on the deed. It's not reassessed because there's a parent-to-child exclusion. But 2 of the siblings don't want to be involved anymore, so they want to get bought out. So the same sibling who's living there stays there. They buy out their siblings. Nothing really has changed in terms of how the property is used, but there has been a change in ownership. 2/3 of that ownership has changed. That will be reassessed, and there'll be a supplemental bill. Anytime a deed is changed, putting it into an LLC, putting it into a trust, putting it into any other type of legal entity, is a change of ownership. Some of those could be excluded from reassessment, but adding somebody's name or deleting somebody's name from a deed is something to be very careful of. Along that line of new construction, I want to talk briefly about accessory dwelling units. This is actually, as I'm sure you're all aware, is becoming a very popular form of construction in LA County. It's now consuming like 25% of all the work that we do. There's some favorable state legislation adopted in recent years that's encouraging homeowners to add them. When adding an ADU is considered new construction for assessment purposes. So if you were to build an ADU, we will assess that addition. We will use a different methodology than we do for sales of property. When there's a market sales of homes, we do the same methodology that you use. We use a market-based comparison, look at recent sales of similar properties. But when you're doing new construction, that's usually unique. There are not market comparables. So we use it's called the cost methodology. We use regional standards for those costs, Marshall and Swift. We will look at what your costs are to build an ADU, although the way that we assess it may not be what your costs are. It will be compared against those regional costs. So if you get a really good deal but have really good quality, you still may be assessed at a higher rate than the cost of the property that you built. The rule of thumb is anytime you're adding square footage, there's going to be a reassessment. Although, adding replacing a roof, remodeling a bathroom, remodeling a kitchen, typically are not reassessable. If you're doing major renovations in a home, moving walls, moving rooms, that could be reassessable even if there's not additional square footage. And there's a common misconception that a lot of people know that if you're applying for a remodel, there's a municipal law that says that sometimes says as long as you leave one wall up, it's not not considered construction. But that is in terms of grandfathering with city municipal code. That has nothing to do with us. If you tear a house down to one wall, the city may not penalize you, but from your assessment, you'll be penalized because that will be viewed as a brand new home and assessed appropriately. One of the other things my office does is we're not a revenue department. My job is not to generate more revenue. Revenue is a byproduct of what we do. My job is to come up with a fair and accurate assessment. You don't want the guy in charge of revenue to be in charge of coming up with a fair and accurate value of your home. However, I am responsible for managing a number of programs that help people save money on their property taxes. There's programs for seniors, veterans, disabled, nonprofits, religious institutions. The most important one that I like to emphasize, though, particularly with realtors, is the homeowner's exemption. Anybody who owns their home and lives in it qualifies for the homeowner's exemption. It's not a huge savings. It allows me to reduce your assessed value by $7,000 a year, which will save about $70 in your taxes. The legislature is in charge of that rate, and they haven't increased it since the early 1970s. However, about 1/3 of all homeowners in LA County don't apply for the homeowner's exemption, primarily because they've never heard of it before. And I like to emphasize this with realtors because I think it's one of these pieces of information that as you do your marketing, whether it be direct mail or email, this is a helpful tip you can share and say with your potential clients. I also recommend that when your clients go into a closing, that you give them a copy of the homeowner's exemption so they can, when there's doling out a great deal of money for a home, maybe you can save a little bit of money starting right away. It's a very simple form. It's only one page. But we estimate that there's about 435,000 homeowners in the county who qualify, who don't apply, and they leave about $40 million on the table every year in unclaimed savings. It's easy to check if you have the homeowner's exemption or not. You go to our website, type in your address. On the page, there's a, do you have an example of it? Yeah, this is what your page will look like. It says exemption right here. It says homeowners next to it, you have it. If it doesn't, you need to apply. And the homeowners exemption leads me to the next topic I wanted to discuss, something you're probably all familiar with, and that's Proposition 19. Homeowners exemption relates to that, which I'll get to in just a second. So Prop 19, you're probably all familiar with. This was a ballot measure sponsored by the California Association of Realtors back in 2020. I will tell you that the California Association of Realtors did a very poor job in putting it together. It was a real dumpster fire trying to figure it out. But it does two major things. The first benefit of Prop 19 is very popular. It allows for the transfer of your tax base when you sell your home and buy a new one. And under Prop 19, if you're a senior over the age of 55, disabled, or the victim of a natural disaster such as flood, fire, earthquake, you can transfer your tax base to a new home without being reassessed. You can transfer it 3 times. If you're married, 6 times. You can transfer it to a home of any value and anywhere in the state of California. That's a great expansion from what the previous law allowed. So if you're 55 and you're married, you can move multiple times and your low tax base will go with you. The other part is not as popular. That deals with family inheritance. This is what they did to kind of offset the revenue loss from the base year transfer. So under the previous law for family inheritance, you could inherit your parents' home and you would not have a tax increase. The home could be of any value. Additionally, if your parents owned additional property, say a rental property, the first $1 million in value was exempted from reassessment. But under Prop 19, that's all been rolled back. So now the benefits are much more narrowly tailored. So now the only property you can inherit to avoid a reassessment is your parents' primary residence, the one that they live in. And for you to qualify for that tax benefit, you must move into that home within 12 months of the change in ownership, usually a death. Additionally, you have to file the homeowner's exemption. And your parents have to have the homeowner's exemption before they transfer it to you. The homeowner's exemption previously was just kind of a savings program. Now it's that statement that's a documentation that that's where you live. You have to in order to maintain that tax benefit, you have to live in that home in perpetuity. There's no sunset on that. Although if you have siblings and you decide you don't want to live in it, but what your siblings do, you can transfer that ownership to your siblings without reassessment. There's also a cap. So it's really only the first $1 million in value is exempted from reassessment. So if your parents have a $2 million home, it's really only the first $1 million that will be exempted from reassessment. The second $1 million will be assessed at market value, so you would get a tax increase, and that's going to become important in just a minute when I give you some market statistics. Also, on the base year transfer, if you're a senior and you're moving your tax base, if you purchase a home that's more expensive, you'll get a new blended rate. You can carry part of your base year with you, the value over the current value of the home that you're selling. You'll come up with a new blended tax rate. It will be less than the market rate, but it'll be more than you were paying previously. So next, let me talk to you a little bit about some of the things going on at the market that we have, particularly in some of the areas that you serve. This chart shows the median sales price of a number of homes in the area of West Hollywood, Beverly Hills, Burbank, Culver City, Glendale. As you can see, the county median average of median sales price of single-family home, this is not including condominiums, is close to $900,000. Every place else is well over $1 million. You'll see as well that there's some change in the median sales price year over year in a couple cities, it doesn't necessarily mean that the values are going down. That has a lot to do with the number and types of transactions. And Beverly Hills did not increase overall 40%, as that number would increase. But those that don't have a lot of, that may be the result of one or two properties. This is important because for Prop 19, because anything over $1 million will result in a partial reassessment. Also adjacent to Prop 19 deals with another big issue that consumes a lot of my office's time, that deals with the death of a property owner. I need to emphasize that when you die, it's important that you tell us. Or somebody needs to tell us, because under California law, when there's the death of a property owner, that is a change in ownership. Thank you. There's a change in ownership, and the law says you're required to notify my office within 150 days. Failing to do so, you can receive a fine. Although I will tell you, we don't fine anybody, because in my 10 years doing this job, we've learned that 100% of the people fail to meet that 150-day deadline because they simply don't know about it. However, it's really important. It could failure to do so could complicate inheritance and estate planning. But there's a form. It's called the Change in Ownership Statement, Death of Real Property Owner. It's online. You can download it. That tells us that property owner is now deceased and somebody else owns it. The longer you wait, the more likely you're going to get something called escaped taxes, which is very, very painful when you get a big bill for all that time that elapsed between the time of the change in ownership due to death. One of the challenges we encounter all the time deals with estate planning, particularly with trusts. Everybody's using trusts these days. One of the things I've observed is people think a trust is like an autopilot. Once your property's in a trust, you're done. And that's simply not the case. The trust is really just a set of instructions. It still requires that you do certain things. The two most important things that get people in trouble are their failure to notify us that there's a change in ownership due to a death, and they fail to file their Proposition 19 or Proposition 58 before that. With the change in ownership under Prop 19, it's imperative that all your obligations be taken care of within 12 months, because after 12 months, you lose the opportunity for that benefit. Under the previous law, we used to be able to apply it prospectively, even if it occurred several years later. Prop 19 is pretty restrictive in that regard. We get a lot of people who would know that they're allowed to inherit their parents' property without reassessment, but they don't know they have to tell us, and they don't fill out the forms, and then they're angry when they get a supplemental tax bill, or now with Prop 19, you'll just end up losing the benefits that would have been available to you. I mentioned a couple times supplemental taxes. I want to explain what that is because it's a common question. Supplemental tax bill is something that are taxes you have to pay, essentially reconciling the tax rate for the previous owner and the new owner because of when the transactions take place and how long it takes us to process them. We may be in the middle of the tax year. There's two things about supplemental taxes that I want to emphasize. One, they are not paid for in escrow. And if you set up an impound account, they're not paid for out of your impound account. And this gets a lot of people in trouble because they'll get this penalty from the treasurer tax collector, and it's 10%. So that could be a pretty hefty bill. And they'll say, well, I set up an impound account to take care of all my taxes, but they're not done through impound. And depending on when during the year you purchase your home, if it's the first 6 months of the year, you get two supplemental tax bills. The second half of the year, you get one. You can, you may be familiar with this, but if you have, we have a tool on our website for anybody who wants to know what their supplemental tax bill will be. It's called a supplemental tax estimator. When you're buying a home, you just go in there and type in some basic information. It'll give you an idea of what that tax bill will look like. We also have tools for those for Prop 19. So for the base year transfer and for the inheritance, if you want to know what the new tax rate will be, there's a tool on our website that will help you, very simple to use, to give you an estimation of what that will, what those taxes will be. So just a couple of things that I want to mention in closing. One of the things I've done since I've been assessor, when I was elected, I inherited this ancient 1980s era mainframe, green screen, DOS-based computer technology platform, which is still common in government. In the real world of business, it's unheard of. But in government agencies, that's why DMV is so horrible. But I've invested about $100 million in upgrading our system, putting it on the cloud. All of our property files, there's 2.5 million properties in LA County, and they were all associated with a paper file. So in the old days, we called our office, we had these paper files stored all over the county. It could take you, sometimes it could take a couple days just to get you the information you need about your property. That's all been digitized now. Our system is now cloud-based, and as a result, we are going to be able to add all types of new robust services to the public. The one I want to mention particularly is what we call the Assessor's e-service account. So if you own property, you can now go on our website and set up a personal profile with your property. One of the things you can do today is you can change your mailing address. Really important that we have your correct mailing address, because if you move, you don't tell us, you don't get your tax bill, and you get a late payment, not receiving a bill is not an excuse for not paying taxes on time. So we have to have that. It's really important we have that mailing address. The most important part of this, though, that I'm really excited about is the component called the homeowner alert. I think you're all familiar that there's been a lot of episodes of title and deed fraud. One of the challenges we have in LA County is that anytime something's recorded against your property, as you probably know, you get a letter from the registrar of recorder, usually 30 to 45 days after that recording took place. But if somebody's committing fraud against you, 45 days may be too long. But now you can go on our site, you can record your email address with your property, and anytime something is recorded, a deed, a grant deed, a deed of trust, or a lien, you'll get an email notification within 48 hours saying something's been recorded, and if it's fraud, you'll be able to respond much more quickly. I encourage you, if you personally own property, to sign up, and I'd personally be grateful if you could help us share this information with your client base. Hopefully it's a good tip that you can help people to protect themselves. In closing, I did want to call your attention to our website. Realtors, quite frankly, are probably the most important constituency I deal with. We're all in the real estate business. We have a lot of information that we think is useful to you in terms of your own professional development, as well as information that you might want to share with your clients. We've actually created a special page on our website called the Real Estate Professionals. It's designed and curated with information that we gear at, particularly for realtors and other people who are real estate professionals. I urge you to bookmark that page. We also send out an informative monthly newsletter with helpful tips for anybody who owns property in the county, and you can subscribe to that on our website as well. I appreciate the invitation to be here to visit with you today. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Before that, I also have my information.
Yeah, it's been there.
My phone number, my email address, and everything else that you know about our office. But thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yes.
So back to your talking about reassessable things, an ADU,
Yes.
bedroom, bathroom, adding square footage, which I think most of us knew that it would be reassessable. I was very surprised. I got reassessed for putting in air conditioning and a deck, and I thought, that's weird. Like, is there a place where we can send our clients who are doing improvements so they might have an understanding of what's going to trigger that?
That's on that information is on our website. I don't know if I can tell you specifically where they need to go, but I can.
Is it a dollar amount though, or
So no, it's based on square. So we typically, if you're replacing an HVAC system, that's typically not reassessable. But if you're adding one where there wasn't one before, that is.
Well, in my case, I added air conditioning to a system that was already there and was reassessed for that addition.
You had air conditioning previously?
No, I had window.
Oh, yeah.
I had like wall air conditioning, and I had.
Yeah, it's That's different. So if you're adding central air, that's considered an improvement that's assessable. That doesn't happen a whole lot, but that is, I don't think it should be, but that's what the law says. If you're adding a deck, you're adding improved space. It's square footage, so that would be, that absolutely would be assessable.
Interesting.
Some of these things are a bummer, but be assured, I'm not the guy who makes the law. I'm just the guy who has to. It's like the CHP officer. He doesn't write the law that he's citing it for. He just has the ticket book. One other thing that I forgot to mention comes up a lot, particularly with realtors, deals with discrepancies that you may encounter as looking at property. There may be a discrepancy between what the city building and safety records say and what assessor records say. They always want to know who to believe, which one are right. The city determines what is lawfully allowed to be on property. So if the city says there's a 2,000 square foot house there, and my records say there's a 3,000 square foot house, that tells me somebody did unpermitted construction. So the fact that you're paying taxes on it and that it's in a government record, my record, does not make it legal. The city is the one that are the legal records.
So if there is a discrepancy and someone is selling a property, but they have the permits that are all signed off, and a lot of times what I see is the permits are there, everything's fine, but for some reason that additional square footage or whatever has not translated to title. So who do they go to fix that?
So that could be, depending on the nature and how much time has gone, that could be problematic. If it's relatively recent, like in the last 10 years,
It's usually very, very old.
you could, so the more recent one, you could be responsible for what we call escaped assessments, meaning that we could go back 4 years and charge you taxes that we missed for those improvements. If it's very, very old, we just want to update our property records to make sure that they're accurate.
But how does our client get that to happen?
So we won't arbitrate who's responsible. Whoever owns the property will probably be the one who receives the tax bill, but you would have the legal recourse to go after the property owner who was in charge, who owned it at the time those changes were made.
But some of these could be 60 years old.
So yeah, well, if something that's 60 years old, we wouldn't be seeking an escape.
No, I'm not talking about a reassessment.
Oh, so,
I'm talking about just getting the information correct.
Sorry?
Just building and safety.
Building
Right.
and safety. So if the permits are there, but it hasn't translated to the assessor's office.
Well, our objective is just to have on the record what is there. Whether it's permitted or not, we don't care about. We just want to know what is there on the property. If it's if there's a discrepancy with the city, they may want to see the permits, or they may grant a grandfather or approve it after the fact.
So if you have, I guess I'm not being clear on the question. So you have the permits, they're fine.
Yeah.
You have them from the city, you can show them, but the assessor's office is not showing that additional square footage. How do you get it? You just send the assessor's office a note and say,
Yeah.
you're at it?
So when the property changes hands, we do our appraisal. If there's something there that's not in our records, we'll want to correct that.
So the new owner would do that?
Yeah.
Okay, not the previous owner?
I don't know that we care who gets it to us, if it's the previous owner who provides it to us at the time of the sale, or the new owner who provides it to us after the sale. We just want to have our records reflect what's actually there on the property.
And so, Mr. Assessor, thank you for being here, by the way. Along the same line, so with permits, permitting of a space that is existing inside square footage, but is not currently permitted, such as the addition of a bathroom inside of a house, also a trigger? There's probably a value add.
It's probably a value add. It'd probably be pretty de minimis, but we need to have that information. If it was something that's done a long time ago, we would probably just make the correction. We do have something else you can do online. You can make corrections if we have says there's 4 bedrooms or bathrooms when there's only 3, or one's a half, and registers a half instead of a full, so
Yeah,
things like that.
I was able to do that with
Little-
when she added the air conditioning and
Yeah,
the jack. I was like, by the way, I don't have any petrol, never been able to find them.
I
So she's.
can't remember what we call it online, but it's like a data correction form,
Okay.
just to ensure what we have is
A lot of
reflective.
those, you know, especially around here, you've got 100-year-old houses
Yeah,
that
it's-
don't reflect.
We have those all over the place in the, kind of in Southeast LA, where a lot of people convert their garages into living space without permits. We have spent a lot of time fixing those things. If there's nothing else, I just want to thank you both, thank my friends for inviting me to be here today. Hope this information was useful and informative. Please stay in touch with us on our through our newsletter or on our website, and contact us if we can be of service. Thank you so much.